And remember that while we're on the path to create the causes to fulfill our very noble aspiration, hindrances will arise because that's the nature of samsara. And so let's greet the various hindrances and obstacles, be they physical or emotional or whatever they are. Let's greet them with a mind that sees them as the result of karma and is willing to bear the discomfort by thinking that this is burning up negative karma that could ripen in a far worse situation or in a lower rebirth. And by generating compassion for all the other living beings who have the same kind of pain or discomfort or obstacles that we do. And so use what we experience to cultivate compassion for other living beings rather than getting angry or getting down on it. And to just believe in our long-term goal, in our potential to become fully awakened, and then just continue on the path. So with that kind of long-term view and a mind of courage, then let's generate the bodhicitta motivation to attain full awakening so we can really do something of great benefit for living beings. So listening to the teachings now is one step in that direction, one drop in the bucket of purification and creation of merit. So, last week and I think the week before, we've been talking about impermanence and death, right? And specifically about the 9-point death meditation, okay? So meditating on the 3 subpoints, which each have 3 subpoints. Yeah. So first remembering that death is definite. There's absolutely no way to avoid it. And to come to the conclusion because of that, that we will practice the Dharma. Okay. So why would we conclude from the awareness that death is definite, that we should practice the Dharma? Why don't we conclude that we're all going to become scientists and try and stop death from occurring, or go into cryogenics so that we can freeze everybody's body until the scientists, can come up with something to restore life? Yeah. Why do we come away from, an awareness of the certainty of death, with thinking that we need to practice the Dharma? Mm-hmm.
I guess it's the only thing that will help at the time of death.
And how does it help?
Well, it gives us, first of all, it helps us avoid creating negative karma that could ripen at the time of death, and kind of spur us on to a bad rebirth. It also gives us the help us reduce our attachment to our body and attachment to this life, which can also be a positive factor at the time of death. And it gives us the peace of mind that we need to generate positive states at the time of death, so that can also help us to generate good rebirth for the next life.
Yeah. Because if we just say, do what often people do because they don't know about the Dharma, which is let's not think about it, then it's like, do you remember when you were a teenager and you had to go take your first driver's lesson at the DMV and how petrified you were? And, if you're unprepared, and we probably were all very prepared, but if you're unprepared, you're going to flunk the driving test. And if we're unprepared for death, it's going to be, even more messy. Okay, and then the second sub-point is that, that death may be definite, but the time of death is uncertain. Okay, and so from that we generate the conclusion that not only must we practice the Dharma, but we must do it now. Okay, so why? Why should we do it now? We have a long life to live. There's many things to experience. Yeah? Why do you want to sit and, look at your belly button or read philosophy texts or meditate on compassion and, somehow try and get yourself to forgive somebody you hate?
I think these meditations on death work for me because they come after the meditation on the precious human rebirth. Then it's very clear to me, especially because I was born in a country with a lot of Dharma, but I didn't meet it till I came here. Then it really hits home like, wow, the conditions are so rare and anytime they can disappear. Then I can make the connection, why meditating on death leads to those conclusions. Otherwise, I remember the first time we were learning Aryadeva's 400 stanzas, and the whole first chapter is just death. Like, it was a bit like, as a beginner, it was a lot to take in, I think. But in the context of the stages of the path meditations, then I don't panic. Like, the conclusion is clear in my mind.
Yeah.
Always visualize this point as the body being like a car, and that the gas tank gauge doesn't work. And so that helps propel me to think, don't get complacent about this. And also the fact that, where we are, the dedications that we make and the news that we hear is that this whole idea that anybody can die at any age. And so that brings me, and the way that they die sometimes is, who would have ever thought, the wild catastrophes, accidents, just going to bed at night and not ever waking up. So the gas tank analogy of not having a needle there to determine gets me to think a little bit more certain. The uncertainty part is the part that I think about a lot.
Yeah. So that propels you to act now.
A lot more.
Because the gas can run out.
And I'll have no idea when.
It's a good analogy. Yeah. And then the third point is at the time of death, our body, first our possessions and money, our friends and relatives, and our body, none of them benefit us at death time. And so the conclusion we draw from that is that therefore, not only should we practice the Dharma, not only should we practice now, but we should practice purely without being pulled away by the 8 worldly concerns. Okay? So how does that conclusion to not be pulled away by clinging to the eight worldly concerns. How does that come from contemplating that our finances and possessions, our friends and relatives, and our body don't come with us? How do you get that conclusion?
If I just look at my mind and my life and see how easy it is to be pulled into the eight worldly concerns, and when that happens, how Dharma is lost. It's like, where to go? And so, all of those material things, all the fleeting pleasures, all of those things are foremost in my mind. And if I died right then, look what kind of mind that is.
Okay. And also, we create so much destructive karma trying to protect or get money and possessions, relationships with people, and to make this body comfortable and take care of it. Okay.
Also, the effect of the eight worldly concerns in terms of swinging from attachment to aversion is very destabilizing to the mind. And so if you are in that swinging back and forth, then there is less energy there to practice. There is less concentration or ability to practice. Yeah, the mind cannot sort of focus really well because you're kind of swinging between those two opposite states.
Right. Yeah. And because the body, the finances and possessions, the relationships with people, our body, those are all the objects of the eight worldly concerns. Yeah. So the more we pay attention to those things, the more the eight worldly concerns are going to arise and take us away from the Dharma and make us create the opposite kind of karma from what we want. Yeah. Okay, so that's where we left off at the end of last week. So thinking about death like this should not be depressing. Okay? If you're getting depressed, then you're not really thinking about it properly. Because the depression or the panic comes through being attached to possessions, friends and relatives, and our body, and then not wanting to separate from those. Okay, that's what causes the panic when people think about death, because it's a total separation from our whole ego identity and everything that's familiar to us now. So if that is a feeling is arising, then we have to work on our attachment to those things, realizing that they're impermanent. They can't bring lasting happiness, even if we had them, and even if every situation was perfect, still there wouldn't be lasting happiness. And that to really see that attachment to them actually is what creates so many problems in our life and makes us miserable. Because when we're attached, we want possessions, relationships, comfort for our body. And then what happens when we can't get it? What happens when we get it and then it goes away? What happens when we lose it? Yeah. Okay. So we can see that attachment is what is the culprit that causes the worldly fear of death, which is this panic feeling. Okay. That's not what we as practitioners are trying to create. you don't need to meditate to create that. Worldly people, you know, we can make ourselves scared and panicky and like that all by ourselves. Okay, so what this meditation is trying to bring about in our mind, is clarity about the focus of our life and the meaning of our life, and so that when we have some clarity about those things, then a lot of our existential angst disappears. And a lot of our problems, our relationship problems, aren't so problematic. Our financial problems aren't so awful. Our physical things with our body, and dealing with an aging body, that, we stop making a big deal about that. And so automatically our suffering right now decreases. Okay, so we get clarity about our priorities in life, and we get a decrease in problems that happen right now. Okay, so we should remember, what is the purpose of doing this meditation, and what are the conclusions we want to draw? Because if we aren't clear about that, then just thinking about death is like, oh no, I'm going to be separated from all the people I love. I don't want that to happen. My body's going to die. Who am I going to be? Oh, I'm going to lose my money. I don't want to separate from my money and my house. And then the mind just totally freaks out. But if we meditate properly, then there's an acceptance of death, and we can use that awareness to actually make our life a lot more peaceful now, and be able to set our priorities so we don't get so confused about what to do and what we want and so on. Okay? So where we stopped last week was right after that third major subpoint, so I want to pick up from there. It's on page 211. So Sri Jagamitrananda's letter to the moon, letter to King Moon. Oh, sorry, I forgot his title. Okay, Chandra Raja is his name. Okay, so this says, Divine One, no matter what fortunes you have gained, when you depart to another rebirth, as though conquered by an enemy in the desert, you are alone, without children or queen, without clothing, without servants, without kingdom, and without palace. So who are you going to be? You think you're a big shot right now? Yeah? What do you have that can last? Though you have limitless power and armies, you will not see or hear them. Eventually, not even one being or thing will follow you in an everlasting way. In brief, if you lack even a name at that time, what need is there to speak about anything else? Yeah? So, we're going to become nobodies. The most we're going to get out of it is an obituary, which we aren't even going to be able to read because we're going to be in another realm by the time it gets published. Okay? And then who knows what they're going to say in the obituary. They surely won't write it the way we want them to. Yeah. We want them to say this and that about us, and they'll forget all the nice things, Okay. And then Shantideva counsels, the untrustworthy Lord of Death. So this is anthropomorphizing death, there's not a real being. The untrustworthy Lord of Death, without waiting whether or not something has been done, whether one is sick or otherwise, suddenly comes. Do not be complacent about life. So You know, when it's time to die, it's time to die. And we're going to be in the middle of something. So we may have a lot of things we want to do, or a lot of things we want to finish. Or you may have a bucket list of, you want to go to Disneyland and you want to go, to the Dunhuang caves and, who knows what you want to do. But you may not get to do them. Death may come before that. And when you die, if you haven't done those things, if you haven't done the worldly things, it doesn't really matter. But if there's Dharma practice that we haven't done, then we're really going to feel that at the time of death. So don't be complacent about life. Leaving all behind, I must depart alone. So it's not going to be that all of our friends and relatives are going to have a big party for us and we're dying and now they're all going to say how much they love us and apologize to us for everything they did that we didn't like. And then, have a big thing of everybody waving goodbye with smiles on their face while we go off into the sunset. No, it's not going to be like that, okay? So leaving all behind, I must depart alone. Through not having understood this, I committed various kinds of negativities for the sake of my friends and foes. Yeah, so, if we look and we review the kind of karma that we've created, we see that we have created a lot of negativities, for our friends and to get even with our foes. And this is what comes with us at the time of death, not the friends and not the foes. Just like an experience in a dream, whatever things I enjoy will become a memory. Whatever has passed will not be seen again. So we have a fantastic dream this life. Yeah, totally unbelievable dream. But at death, it's just going to be a memory. Yeah, and we can't take it with us. And, we can't take all the memories with us because we'll be going through the whole death process and into a new rebirth. We're not going to have our journal with us or our gadget with all that we've put all of our pictures in so that the pictures keep turning, all the pictures of our life. And, we're not going to have that with us or our scrapbooks or all the family photos, or all of our souvenirs or any of it. Yeah, it's going to stay here and other people are going to look at it and say, why was she saving all this junk? Yeah. Do you think people will look at some of the stuff you saved, you collected, and say, why was she saving all this junk? When I was in high school, I had a whole scrapbook. Somebody gave me this scrapbook. It was a dating scrapbook. So that you could put in souvenirs from all the dates you went on. So the napkins from the restaurant, the ticket stubs from the movies, all these things. So I was a good teenager. I made my dating scrapbook. Yeah. And when I went to India, it got stored in a garage. And when I came back and I had to clean my stuff out before I went to be ordained, I threw it all out. Can you imagine? My mother was horrified. All those souvenirs, my first date with Harry Addington, from him on up. Okay, do you remember your first date, who you had your first date with? Yeah. So, and where you went, and then all the other people you dated. Okay, and then it got thrown out. I mean, just think if I had just saved that, all of you could look at it right now. And I'm sure you would be very interested in seeing those napkins and tickets. And a few pictures too, you know. Shantideva continues, thereby, through not having realized that I will suddenly vanish, I committed many negativities through ignorance, attachment, and hatred. Okay, so to get that dating scrapbook, what I did motivated by attachment, yeah, what I did motivated by anger, when the guys, you know, were supposed to call, you know, they were supposed to, if they called on Monday, it meant they really liked you. If they called on Tuesday, that was good too. If they called on Wednesday, it was they couldn't find a date on Monday and Tuesday, so your second choice. And if they called it on Thursday, forget it, you know. Yeah, you remember all that? Yeah, and then we got angry. So, yeah, and that's just being a teenager. Imagine what adults do. Okay. So our worldly actions are like ripples in water, one leading to the next. Our mind distracted by the endless worldly activities in our lives. We have little time for Dharma practice before death arrives. At that time, regret overwhelms us as we realize that time could have been spent cultivating wisdom and cutting the root of samsara. Okay? So if we have faith in the Dharma path, we don't want to arrive at our death and say, you know, I haven't done anything. You know? In addition, many of our constructive actions are polluted by the 8 worldly concerns, creating the image of being an excellent practitioner. We hunger for praise, offerings, and reputation. And then we go around acting like we're some kind of great practitioner so that people will give us all this ego-pleasing stuff that we want. Unaware, we miss the chance to prepare for death. There's a story about a man who slipped while walking on the edge of a cliff. He broke his fall by catching hold of a root. Looking up, he saw a strawberry, and yearning for the pleasure of its taste overwhelmed him. Meanwhile, a rat was busy gnawing the root. Distracted by desire for the strawberry, he did not protect himself and fell to his death as the root broke. So this is the story that many Western Buddhists draw a very different conclusion from, because he's hanging there and seeing the strawberry and the rat's digging it, you know, gnawing at the root, and he thinks, I'm going to die, so why not just enjoy the moment and be in the present moment, and eat the strawberry. So I've heard this kind of version of the story in some Buddhist magazines, but that's not the version my teacher taught. Yeah. Oblivious of the effects our actions have on others and ourselves, we often act impulsively and grasp whatever will fulfill our needs and wants in the present moment. But when we arrive at the end of our lives and look back, or even if we look back now at what we did for the last 10 years, which of our actions were really valuable? I have never heard of a dying person regretting that they did not work more overtime. Yeah. Or they did not buy the right stock when the value of the stock was low and they could buy it and it would go up. Yeah. Remembering this, let's be mindful and make wise decisions now, steering our energy towards Dharma practice, an activity that will bring ourselves and others benefit for a long time to come. Yeah. So especially the things that annoy us, yeah, what other people do that we get so annoyed about. When you really think about death, it's like, why am I making such a big deal about this? Yeah. So when Geshe Nawandargye was teaching us that chapter from Aryadeva's, the 400 on death, my neighbor in the next room used to play her radio so loud. That whole time while he was teaching that chapter, I would come back, meditate on death. My mind was so peaceful, I didn't care if she played her radio loud. I didn't bother getting angry. It's like, I have better things to do with my time and energy. So think sometimes about the things that, small things people do. Yeah, you're in a hurry and they ask you to help put a dish out for lunch. And it's like, why are you asking me? I'm in a hurry to do something, leave me alone. To just think about the things that we get irascible about and ask ourselves, what's the use? Yeah, what's the use? If we're going to die and we don't know when we're going to die, is this how we want to spend our life? Criticizing people, blaming people, hating people, vowing never to forgive them for what they did to us. Is that a wise use of our time and human energy? I don't think so. Although many great masters may recite prayers for our good rebirth, perform powa, the transference of consciousness after our death, or give us instructions to recognize the bardo, the intermediate state between one life and the next, after the breath has stopped. It is far more effective to have studied and practiced the Dharma we learned while alive. Yeah? So it's strange. I mean, you look around, all of a sudden when somebody dies, then, they're approaching death, then gotta do something, okay? And so your friends and relatives, quickly, they organize prayer ceremonies for you, okay? And they call a High Lama to do powa for you. And they, try and get it so that somebody gives you some high teaching in Tibetan that you can't understand, but you're still hearing it, so it's planting good seeds on your mind stream. Yes, that all is very nice, but it would be far more beneficial and useful to have studied and practiced the Dharma while we were alive. Yeah? And like I was saying the other day, if we want to help our friends and relatives, the best way to do it is to encourage them to practice virtue and abandon non-virtue while they're alive. Yeah. Then, you can do things after they die and so on. But, the main thing is while they're alive. So don't just think, oh, I'm sitting here, I have so many Dharma friends. When I die, they're all going to come together and they're going to do this puja and that puja, and that'll help me. So in the meantime, I'll get mad at them and irritated and have craving and desire and do all sorts of stupid things because I know my friends will pray for me and make offerings for me after I die. Yeah? Is that wise? Pretty dumb, isn't it? And here, this is typical His Holiness, doing the instructions to recognize bardo and getting poa and all this, and having somebody teach you or do that to you as you're dying. His Holiness says, if we don't pay attention to these masters' instructions while we are alive, what makes us think we will listen to them when we're dying? Yeah, he doesn't pull any punches. If we don't listen to Dharma instructions, while we're alive and we're healthy and we can listen and understand and practice, what makes us think that when we're dying, and it's so confusing because we're separating from this body, what makes us think at that time we're all of a sudden going to sit up straight and listen to Dharma teachings and then go back and meditate on them? It's like, that's not going to happen. We can pay people to do many things for us, to mow the lawn or to prepare a report, but we cannot hire someone who will eat for us so that we feel nourished. As with eating and sleeping, creating virtue and abandoning non-virtue are activities we must do ourselves. Can't hire anybody to do it for us. Knowing that only the Dharma benefits us at death, generate the determination to practice it purely, free from the influence of the 8 worldly concerns. Okay. Whereas death arrives effortlessly, spiritual development requires effort. We cannot wait and hope that with the passage of time we will become more disciplined, loving, and compassionate. Only through careful training can we develop these qualities. Although our body may get old, weak, and eventually stop functioning, our afflictions will not decline and disappear with time. In fact, sometimes they grow stronger, and some people become more bitter, angry, or emotionally dependent as they age. And we've certainly seen that. Have you seen that in people that you know? Yeah. The afflictions remain fresh and energetic unless we make an effort to counteract them. Years ago, I visited Thailand, where many monasteries have a skeleton near the meditation hall. I saw that too when I was in Thailand. Sometimes it's just outside the hall, sometimes as soon as you enter in. One monastery had a display with photographs of the stages of a rotting corpse. Seeing these reminded me that I too will die, His Holiness says, and keeping that vividly in mind spurs me to transform my mind. When I was in Thailand, at the monastery I was at, we were able to go to a hospital and see an autopsy. In the States, very difficult to do that kind of thing. But in Thailand, they're quite aware that this is something that the monks and nuns want to do as part of their practice. So they make it easy for you. So it was very interesting to go. I went with Wei Ling, one Singaporean woman, and then there were maybe 3 or 4 Western monks who came. It was quite interesting. The Western monks were so afraid that Wei Ling and I were going to faint. And it's like, guys, we helped our mothers when we were little cooking meat. We've seen this already. This is not going to make us faint. And then we found out that one of the monks, the previous time he had gone, had fainted. Yeah. But it was very interesting going and watching. They have this little kind of blade that turns around, and they just do it like here, right around there, take off the top of your skull, take out your brain. They were weighing different organs because they were also assessing why this guy died. This particular man drowned, okay? They put, so the kinds of scales that they have at the grocery store where you weigh your pears and apples. So they put his brain in and weighed that and, noted it down. And then, cut open here, pulled out the esophagus and everything else, and just pulled it out and put it down over there. And then cut the sternum, opened the whole thing up here, pulled out the lungs, weighed them, pulled out the heart, weighed it, weighed the stomach, pulled everything out, okay? And the intestines and, did the whole lot so that his everything, all the inner organs were out. And they were all, analyzed and weighed and investigated and everything. And then, they had to put it all back together again to release the body to the family. So then they took all the organs and they just stuffed them in. Yeah. Any which way, with all the newspaper, because when they took out the organs, they had put it on newspaper. So they just took all the newspaper or the organs, stuffed it in here, stuff it in here. Maybe his stomach was in his head. His brain was down here. This newspaper, who knows what the newspaper was saying, was, they stuffed it all in and then sewed it up. Put the skull back on, sewed the whole thing up. Before they had done the skull, they had just cut the skin and then peeled it back. So then after they sewed this together, then they just brought it back here again. So it looked like he had hair, and sewed him up and then he was good to go. Yeah. So, and it was very interesting to me because the guy, the doctor, who does coroners, what more pathologists, yeah. So they, for him it was just like for us being with our mothers cooking meat. It was like, here's this and here's that and yeah. But it was very interesting seeing that and then, really thinking, okay, that's what this body is, and how am I going to feel if somebody treats my body like that? And it's really interesting, because it's like, okay, when I'm dead, I have I'm not related to this body at all. It's just a bunch of vegetable goo. But if they have to do an autopsy, please handle it nicely. Yeah. And don't just throw my innards around and don't just slice this, here and, go, then take it out and throw it on a scale, It's like, this is me, this is my body. You should treat it nicely. And then you come back and you realize, wait, I'm dead. Why am I attached to what happens to my body after I die? And then you read about Nancy Reagan, who, she had her hair done. And there was one movie star, who was it? Again, who had her hair done, her makeup, everything looked really good. You have to look good in your casket because you got to keep up your looks and your reputation. It's absurd, isn't it? And yet our mind goes, oh, but it was mine. Well, first it's me. No, it was mine. Treat it nicely. It might get hurt if you just rip it open like this. That's going to hurt. And then you go, no, I'm dead. It's not going to hurt. Yeah. So it's very interesting to watch what our mind does. Yeah. And then, oh, what happens if they're doing multiple autopsies and, my stomach is put back in somebody else's body and their heart gets mixed up and puts back in my body before they sew it up. Oh, no, It's like, why do I care about that? Yeah. Why do I care about what happens to my body or how my body looks after I die or how people treat it? Yeah. We realize, boy, our mind is really kind of crazy. Huh. Yeah. As if we're going to be up there on some cloud and say, I'm in the bardo and I'm transitioning to another life, but you better treat my body more respectfully. Yeah. And if you're going to embalm it, do a good job. Yeah. So, and it's amazing, how people are so, the survivors when somebody dies, feel so guilty that that's why they buy these incredible expensive caskets, as if to make up to the dead person by putting their body in an expensive casket. Yeah. When my mom died, we had to go back and choose a casket. In Judaism, you have to be buried in a plain wooden thing. You can't have decorations and all this kind of stuff. And you have to be buried, hopefully, within the next day. Yeah. It can be extended if all the relatives haven't arrived, but it's quick and it's simple, and they don't embalm you. But they took us back into that room because the cemetery had, they buried all sorts of people from different religions. Some of those caskets, $1,000, $2,000, $4,000, with like silver handles and incredible padding inside so that your body's very comfortable, and then special charges for embalming it, and putting the makeup on, and you have to bring in the clothes that you want them buried in. Yeah, so we had to go look in my mom's closet. What are we going to bury mom in? And then wonder, how are they going to get that on her body? Because she has rigor mortis. So then, we decided to do a nightgown because she never got dressed in the last years of her life. She just stayed home. So how are they going to get that over her body so it looks good? And what kind of slippers, house slippers, do we have to put in? With my dad, it was much easier because they had just got him. He was a big Angels baseball fan. So they had just got him an Angels sweatshirt, an Angels cap, and so it was very easy. He got dressed in all of his Angels thing, with his baseball cap and yeah, that was easy. Mom, we had to kind of look and think about it more. Yeah. Some of you have had this experience? Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Really interesting.
So this is mostly for the people behind. What is it? I mean, is it part of the grieving process? Is it just the self-grasping? I mean, what's the whole ritual of burying people and memorials and stuff? It's mostly for the living, for sure. And is it the self-grasping that's still identifying the self in that corpse? Like when people with the COVID and where they can't see their loved ones and they can't go through this whole process of even looking at the body, what does that do to the grieving process because we're so attached to the body as the identification of the loved one?
Yeah.
How do we
I
have
think
to
that's
rethink
why
it?
many people feel like with COVID, they can't say goodbye. They can't hold the hand. They can't wash the body after, their loved one dies. So they feel as if the body, like okay, they know it's just a dead body, but it's as if it's what they have left of the person because they can't see the mind and the mind's gone. So then they want to treat the body respectfully. They want to give pleasure to the body so that it's in this nice, comfortable casket, even though it doesn't have any sensations or any feelings, And so it's a way of human beings have of showing affection, of taking care of each other. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to just take my loved one's body. And, people were getting so upset that it was getting buried in the potter's field with all the unclaimed bodies in just wooden boxes because they were so overloaded with COVID deaths that they couldn't bury people as they usually do. And people were feeling like, oh, this is terrible, And when they can't see the loved one, I think that seeing the person dead brings it home. Oh, yes, that person is dead. Whereas when they can't do that, there's some, it feels incomplete. Or when they really, because at that time when the person's dying, they forget all the arguments. They forget all that. And they want to be nice. And so how do you show being nice? You do all these kind of ritual kind of things for the body. Yeah. And, And I think a lot of the religious ceremonies too, I think they're more for the living, that yes, the prayers and stuff can help the people who died, but I think it's a way for the living to feel like they're doing something, anything for their loved ones because they couldn't control that person and make it so they didn't die. So they want to show their affection in some way. Yeah, or show their connection in some way.
I just think about them so much as how they have to grieve without this ritual anymore, this framework. And how will it impact long-term their ability to move on with their lives, to make peace with things, to do whatever we do with these rituals,
And some people will adjust and adapt, and some people will feel like something's incomplete, And especially too when you watch what happens when there's so many deaths in the hospital and putting people in body bags. And I was watching something this morning in the Times. If you have a chance, you saw that, about the Rockaway hospital. And there was, they were putting people in a refrigerated trailer. And, it was like row 5, slot 2, So it was like not somebody's address, this apartment 5. It was your loved one was in this trailer at, a certain row at a certain number in a body bag that looked like all the other dead bags. And the people who were moving them, you could tell some of the people they were moving were really big because you had like 3 or 4 men there going 1, 2, 3, and then moving it a few feet, and then 1, 2, 3, lugging it another few feet. Or when they're in the trailer, just dragging it, one guy dragging it, because there were so many deaths that, they had to get the bodies out of the hospital to make the beds available for other people. And they had to get them into the refrigerated trailer because otherwise they would start to smell. And so the guys who were doing this, they were saying, this is my friend. This is my friend's father. These are people I grew up with, and now they're just, putting them in body bags and, 1, 2, 3, and moving them a little bit. Yeah. Amazing. So, how these people get a sense of closure. I think for the time when, that's why I think they try sometimes to get the tablets in there where they can say goodbye, even if the person who's dying is intubated and unconscious. It's still a feeling if I can say what I need to say while they're still alive, and maybe they can hear it. Yeah, and that helps a lot. Or even before, they're died, if they can sometimes, because I think you can remove the tube. I was in a hospital once where somebody was intubated, and they took the tube out, and he became conscious quite quickly, and then the family could say goodbye and all. Actually, in his case, it was the family was asking him if he wanted to be the intubation to be discontinued, because it was a situation where he wasn't going to get better. Yeah. So they did that and asked him, and he said yes. And then we moved the body to a separate room. It was very nice. They let us have a separate room where he could die. But yeah, so it's hard. It can be very difficult for the family.
Are there any meditations or practices we can do to prepare for our loved ones dying? Working with attachment's one thing, but kind of imagining death? Or?
Yeah, I know what I did for years that really helped me was just imagining my parents dying and imagining what they were going to look like as dead corpses. Yeah, and imagining, how am I going to feel when they're dead? And, what do I need to say to them now? And if I am with them when they die, what do I want to do to ease their pain and their confusion when they're dying? And then imagine being there and saying that to them. Because I knew for sure if I was with my parents when they died, I didn't want to be there and be so hysterical myself that, I'm making a big show and making everything worse and making them upset because I'm upset. So I practiced this in my meditation a lot, like how I would act, what I would say, things like that. It was actually very helpful because then when my parents died, I was prepared. I had kind of rehearsed this.
Someone asks, aren't preparations for the bardo important to practice and prepare for as part of one's Dharma practice to be able to deal with throwing karma?
The karma ripens before you enter the bardo. And the karma ripens, during the dying process where you still have some conscious awareness. So that's when the karma for your next life is ripening. So you want to be able, while you're dying, to generate a Dharma motivation and put your mind in the Dharma. How are you going to do that when you're dying? It's by keeping your mind in the Dharma now, moment to moment, as much as you possibly can. You can't say, I'm just going to live my life and have a good time. And when death comes, then I will pay attention, I'll generate bodhicitta, because, when I die, I'm just going to be lying there looking beautiful. Everything's going to be peaceful and I'll generate bodhicitta. My mind won't be confused. I'm not going to be intubated. I'm not going to be filled with all kinds of narcotics. I'm not going to be in pain. I'm going to be clear and lucid, and the Dharma is going to be vibrant in my mind. And then meanwhile, during our life, we forget the Dharma, and our mind's filled with attachment and jealousy and arrogance and resentment. It's what His Holiness said here, if we don't pay attention to these masters' instructions while we're alive, what makes us think that we're going to listen to them when we're dying? So if we don't practice the Dharma when we are alive, what makes us think we're going to practice it as we're dying? And what makes us think that in the bardo, all of a sudden, we're going to be wide awake and recognize it's the bardo and say, I want, take me to the Pure Land or something like that. We are creatures of habit, and we have to create those causes now. And look what we're habituated with. What is our usual MO? And what happens if we just play out our usual MO? We're in the hospital dying, and, it's like, oh, move this sheet, I'm too hot, take it off. I'm too hot. Put on my slippers, I'm too cold, comb my hair, I want some water. Are we just going to be some kind of disagreeable, complaining person as we're dying? If we have the energy when we're dying. Yeah? Or, our friend Diana, who just passed away, apparently when they were taking her to the hospital the night before she died, she was asking her daughter for forgiveness. Yeah. So we don't know, and her daughter said, we love you, there's nothing to forgive. But we don't know exactly what was going through Deanna's mind that she was doing that, because also she had, and not Alzheimer's, well, maybe it was, dementia of some sort, yeah. So, we don't know exactly what was going through her mind. And she's somebody who had, a very stable Dharma practice, really was into the Dharma. And then, she got demented and things changed. My friend Frank, who died just a couple of weeks ago too, I don't know how he died. His wife didn't tell me, but he was a really good practitioner. And so I have some confidence that somehow he was able to take refuge and generate bodhicitta as he was dying. He had practiced for many years. He was a very, very good practitioner. But on the other hand, he was separating from his wife that he loved very dearly. They had been married for, 30-something years. And they were real Dharma friends. So, yeah.
I read once in Gyalé Rinpoche's, one of his books, that when somebody has a strong refuge and the Buddha is very present during the time of dying, that one will not fall into the lower realms.
Oh, yeah.
That is.
Yeah. That's why, if you have refuge strong in your mind, you will not fall in the lower realms. So the same is going to go definitely, even if you can generate artificial bodhicitta, any kind of Dharma motivation that protects your mind, and it acts as the fertilizer that will make a virtuous karma ripen, which will throw you into a good rebirth. Yeah.
You just said that by thinking of generating bodhicitta and taking refuge will bring us to a good karma. But what about if all my life I got angry and at my time of death, if I can remember to say, oh, I'm taking refuge, it will help me by doing that?
Yes. But
why?
Because you'll have a virtuous mind at the time when that karma is ripening. But if you've been angry your whole life, start transforming your mind now so that you really set up a good habit so that thought of bodhicitta, that refuge in the three jewels, will arise much more easily when you die. Yeah. Okay, because we're creatures of habit, and what we do, we tend to do again. So this is why it's important to purify, because when we purify, one of the results of purification is that we're breaking the habit to do that action again. Okay.
I wanted to share then something that is maybe helpful. When I came to the Abbey here 8.5 years ago, I had this appendix thing that happened in the middle of the night,
right.
and it was kind of dangerous actually. And then I had the surgery, and then I woke up, and then I had some recovery time. And I had no time to take any book with me, or not even my mala, I think, because it was just so explosive. And so then I was there for 3 days, I think, in the hospital bed and just trying to recover to be able to go home. And so I had nothing. And they had not even good newspapers or such, really nothing. So, and then I recognized, okay, what to practice. And I think I had just a minimum compared to what I have now, and how important it is then to really know what to do. And imagine you are there for 2 weeks or 1 month in a hospice maybe, that you have things in your mind. You can really make your time useful.
Yeah.
That was kind of a wake-up call.
Yeah, right. And that's why it's very good to memorize many of these short texts, because then, if you're incapacitated and you're in the hospital, you can recite the text very slowly and contemplate each text. And, you remember each verse and think about its meaning. That's very good to do.
Also, I like to prepare my mind by when I get surprised by something or something happens unexpectedly, to see what my mind does with that. Like if I get scared, and see how I manage my mind to stay even and not go in that out of control. Because those are the times when I can actually practice, which is very similar to death time.
Right. Yeah. So the time when something frightening happens, a time when you're in pain, a time when physical pain, or a time when you're in mental pain, then, okay, how am I going to deal with my mind? Mm-hmm. And there you see, that's actual practice. Practice isn't just turning the prayer wheel and, moving your mala. It's changing your mind.
Jolene asks, if the dying person does not have a regular mantra he or she is chanting, and we see this person is in fear, what mantra should we chant for him or her?
It doesn't matter. You just chant anything. Yeah. Don't sit and worry about what to chant. The Chenrezig mantra is always good. Om Mani Padme Hum, or the Buddhist mantra, or medicine Buddha, or whatever it is. Yeah. Don't worry if that person has no practice. If they know some Dharma, remind them of the Dharma, remind them of their teacher, remind them of the qualities of the 3 jewels. If they've done even minimal practice, some chanting before or something, remind them of that, say it so that they can hear. Yeah. So anything you do is going to be good, especially if a person doesn't have much of a practice, anything you do is good. And especially, I think, telling somebody to, bring up their heart of loving and compassion and take that with them as they transition into the next life, to tell them that, that kind of thing is very good. If it's somebody who's a practitioner, remind them of refuge, remind them of bodhicitta, talk about emptiness, remind them of if they have a particular deity that they resonate with, remind them of that. Okay. There's a way to write out a Dharma will for, what you want people to do and what you want them to remind you of as you're dying. So you can do that and then let the people you're close to know where you keep it. Okay, we have that here, we try and, do all of our powers of attorney and all, the will about our property, who's going to get my old pair of shoes. And, yeah. Actually, being a Sangha member makes it very easy because actually, unless you give specific items to individual people, it goes to the Sangha, it goes to the community. So that makes it kind of easy. But you want to make sure you're in agreement because you don't want to be on your deathbed and say, oh, my old pair of shoes, I wanted to leave it to Venerable so-and-so, and now it's going to go into the storage closet and she may not get it. Okay. Or, all the money I had in my bank account, and I haven't told anybody any of the details about it, and how are they going to know? And here I am dying, quick, go in my second drawer down in the back underneath the tablets, and pull out the checkbooks and the this and the that so that you know where I keep all my money. So it's better to plan all this stuff beforehand. Okay. Okay, so we'll stop here. Okay, so this is really something to think about, and because if we prepare for death, then they say that dying is like going on a picnic. And I saw one monk die that way, and it was just amazing, Kind of his body was hemorrhaging, and this incredible stuff was coming out of it. And he was, telling people how to lay his body out, first in the position of the deity that he had practiced, and then first he wanted his body to be sitting up, but it couldn't sustain that. So then in the position of the deity, couldn't sustain that. So then on his right side with his hand like this. And then there was one nun that I knew in Dharamsala, and she died of kidney failure. And I heard that she was sitting in meditation when she died. Yeah. So she was a Western nun.
Jana says, how often do you dedicate merit? Only after a formal practice, or do you do it often throughout the day for even small actions?
You can do it. You can do it through small actions. You can save it for the end of the day, as you wish. Yeah. Okay.